I'm a saloon girl, Mr. Whitmore. I'll embarrass you simply by existing.
The marriage was supposed to be a transaction, clean and simple. Samuel Whitmore, the railroad magnate's son, needed a wife to secure a business deal in New Mexico. His father needed to demonstrate that the Whitmore family was serious about establishing roots in the territory. A temporary wife, easily discarded once the contracts were signed, made perfect sense to men who value convenience over character. That's where Lily came in. She worked at the Silver Spur Saloon in Socorro, one of the most notorious establishments west of the Mississippi. She was a saloon girl in the truest sense. She poured drinks, she danced, she entertained businessmen with witty conversation and practiced smiles. By the standards of respectable society, she was exactly the kind of woman a man of Samuel's station would never willingly marry. That made her perfect for his purposes. Samuel approached her on a Tuesday night in early September. The saloon was crowded, the air thick with cigar smoke, and the sound of a piano being played by someone who'd had too much whiskey. Lily was at the bar, collecting empty glasses with the efficiency of someone who'd been doing it for years. She wore a red dress that caught the lamplight, and her dark hair was pinned with what looked like actual jewels, though Samuel suspected they were paste. "Miss Lily," he said, his voice carrying the crisp accent of the East Coast. "I wonder if we might discuss a business proposition." Lily turned to him with the practiced smile she offered every customer. But something in her eyes changed when she registered his clothing, his bearing, the silver he wore without trying to impress anyone. She recognized quality when she saw it, and she recognized opportunity. "A business proposition," she repeated, setting down her tray. "That's a new way to phrase it, sir." He didn't flinch at her directness. "My name is Samuel Whitmore, and I'm making you a serious offer." They talked in the back room of the saloon. Samuel laid out the terms with the detachment of a man negotiating a cattle purchase. He would pay her $500, a fortune to a woman in her position. She would marry him, stay married to him for exactly 1 month while he concluded his business dealings, and then they would quietly divorce. She would keep the money. No one needed to know the marriage had been anything but genuine. "And if I refuse?" Lily asked, swirling the whiskey he poured her. "Then I find someone else. But I prefer you. You're intelligent. You know how to move in society. You won't embarrass me." Lily laughed. A real laugh, not the practice one she used on customers. "I'm a saloon girl, Mr. Whitmore. I'll embarrass you simply by existing." "Perhaps," he said, "but you'll do it with style." She married him because $500 meant she could leave Socorro forever. It meant she could stop pouring drinks at 11 o'clock at night. It meant she could become someone else, or perhaps become herself for the first time. Samuel married her because a signed contract in front of a priest meant his father's business partners would accept him as a serious man. It was a marriage of convenience, so transparent that even the priest had raised his eyebrows during the ceremony. The wedding night was scheduled to take place at the territorial mansion Samuel's father had rented for the visit. It was a grand house, all white columns and manicured lawns, the kind of place that had never harbored anyone like Lily. Samuel dressed for dinner in his finest suit. Lily emerged from the dressing room wearing a white nightgown that cost more than her annual salary as a saloon girl. They sat across from each other in the master bedroom. The door closed against the servants and family members who were, Samuel knew, waiting to hear sounds of consummation. "We should be quick about this," Samuel said. For appearances, Lily studied him for a long moment. In the lamplight, her face was serious. Stripped of the performance, she wore like a second skin. "You've never been with a woman, have you?" Samuel felt heat rise in his neck. "That's not relevant." "It's entirely relevant, Mr. Whitmore, because if you're going to reform marital relations with me, I'm not going to let you bumble through it like some farm boy on his first night. It would be embarrassing for both of us, and I don't embarrass easily. I hardly think." "Sit," she interrupted, "and stop thinking. That's the problem with men like you. You think everything to death. You plan. You negotiate. You treat intimacy like a business transaction, which is exactly what this is." Samuel said coldly, "Not tonight, it's not," Lily said. She stood and walked to him, moving with a grace that had nothing to do with the practiced seduction of the saloon. "Tonight, You're going to let me show you what it's actually like to be with a woman, not because I'm a saloon girl and therefore obligated, but because I'm choosing to, and because we're alone and no one will ever know what happens in this room, except us." Samuel wanted to protest. He wanted to maintain the emotional distance he'd carefully constructed, but Lily had already begun unbuttoning his waistcoat, and her touch was so gentle, so different from what he'd expected, that he found himself unable to move. She undressed him slowly, talking to him in a quiet voice about things that had nothing to do with what she was doing. She told him about the town where she'd grown up, about the mother who died when she was 12, about the reason she'd ended up in Socorro. She asked him questions about his childhood, about the pressure his father had placed on him, about his real life beneath the careful facade. By the time they were both undressed, Samuel felt like she'd stripped away more than his clothing. She'd exposed something in him that he'd carefully protected his entire life. What happened between them that night wasn't the awkward, performance-based coupling he'd anticipated. It was something deeper, an exchange of vulnerability that frightened and thrilled him in equal measure. Lily was in complete control, but not in the way he'd feared. She was in control because she was present, because she was aware, because she cared about his experience as much as her own. No woman had ever done that for him before. Afterward, they lay together in the darkness, and Samuel found himself telling her things he'd never told anyone. He talked about the weight of expectation, about his doubts regarding the railroad business, about the fear that he would never be good enough to satisfy his father. Lily listened without judgment, running her fingers through his hair like she was soothing a child. "Your father is a fool," she said finally. "If he can't see that you're a better man than he is, then he's blind. And that's his failure, not yours. How did you become so wise?" Samuel asked. "You've worked in a saloon." "Yes," she said. "And in a saloon you listen to men talk. You hear their confessions and their fears and their deepest shames. You learn quickly that most people are just trying to survive, and the ones who judge the hardest are usually the most frightened." The month progressed, and something neither of them had planned began to happen. Samuel found himself looking forward to coming home, not because of his business dealings, but because Lily would be there. She began to shed the performance that had been her armor for so long. She read books from his father's extensive library. She wrote letters to people she'd known in Socorro, trying to help them escape the life she was leaving behind. She asked intelligent questions about the railroad business, and Samuel found himself explaining his genuine concerns to her, discovering that she had a keen mind for logistics and human nature. One evening, about 3 weeks into their supposed month-long arrangement, Lily told him that she wasn't going to go through with the divorce. "I won't stay if you don't want me to," she said. "But I want to stay. If you'll have me." Samuel realized that somewhere between the negotiated transaction and this moment, he'd fallen in love with the woman his father had chosen precisely because she was supposed to be beneath him. She was, in fact, above him, more honest, more courageous, more capable of genuine connection than anyone he'd ever known. "I want you to stay," he said, "not because of the business, not because of my father, because I love you." They didn't divorce. Samuel's father was shocked, scandalized, and ultimately forced to accept the marriage because it was already done. The society pages in Denver and Santa Fe published breathless accounts of the railroad heir's surprise marriage to the mysterious dark-haired woman from Socorro. Some called it a scandal. Others, reading between the lines, recognized it as a love story. Lily never returned to the Silver Spur, but she didn't disappear either. She became known throughout the territory as a woman of surprising influence, a patron of schools for poor children, an advocate for women's rights, a woman who had somehow managed to transcend the boundaries society had drawn for her. And Samuel, who had married her against his will, or so he thought, realized on their wedding anniversary that Lily had been in control from that very first moment. She'd recognized not a man seeking a transaction, but a man desperate to be truly seen. She'd given him that gift on their wedding night, and every night thereafter. Years later, when their children asked how their parents had met, Lily would smile and say, "He wanted to buy me. I decided to keep him instead." And Samuel, listening to her tell the story, would think that it was the truest summary of his life that anyone had ever offered. He hadn't married her against his will. He'd married her exactly as the universe had intended, without understanding his own deepest desires, until the woman he tried to purchase had shown him what he actually needed. That night in the master bedroom had changed everything. Lily had taken control of their narrative not through manipulation or seduction in the traditional sense, but through the radical act of being authentic. And Samuel, for the first time in his life, had been brave enough to let her,